Hey, what's up? This is Odolena from Odolena Digital, and today I'm gonna talk about this book called Homo Deus by Yuval Noah Harari. He is the writer of this book, Sapiens. So if you haven't watched my review of Sapiens, you can see it there. Every Sunday I come up with a new video. Subscribe to my channel if you haven't done so. This book is super interesting. This is something that it's funny how sometimes books come at the right moment of your life, like just one after the other. I first read something in this summer which is called Brave New World. So this is a fiction book, science fiction book, but it's super scary, closely resembling our reality. It's kind of like a prediction about the future, about how society is going to be kind of manipulated by bioengineering, by genetics, by biochemistry, so kind of taking the right drug, the right chemical in your brain in order to feel a certain way, in order to kind of perform in a certain way. So a lot of these things sound really familiar to nowadays. And then I came across Sapiens. I've heard about the book many times, but then I looked at an interview with the writer and he sounded like such a knowledgeable person, so I really wanted to read it. And now I read all his 3 books. So he has another book called 21 Lessons for the 21st Century, which is a little bit more about the nowadays, a little bit less going into the far future. But this one, Homo Deus, is going like really far in time. So this is kind of like the craziest dreams or nightmares of humanity, let's say in the next 200 to 300 years. It's like a brief history of tomorrow. So how do you write a brief history of tomorrow since tomorrow hasn't happened yet? And the writer is a historian, so he is the University of Oxford graduate. I think he did a PhD there. Now he's a professor in Jerusalem in history, and he has like a lot of interdisciplinary knowledge. So he takes this approach of looking back in the history and predicting from the history the future. So as Winston Churchill says, like, the further you look into the past, the further you can see in the future. So he's taking this approach, but also he's taking into consideration the acceleration of history in the recent time, the acceleration of technology, this exponential movement and changes that are kind of becoming faster and faster and faster, and in which direction our lives and society is going based on technology. So first of all, he talks a little bit about where we stand today. So we've conquered the worst enemies of humanity and kind of the biggest dangers to our biological species, the sapiens. So this is the war, the famine and diseases. So now it's more likely that you commit suicide than actually die in a war. The war is becoming obsolete, so people don't need these huge armies. They can be controlled with machines, fighting against other machines. You can just remotely control drones and all kind of war machines. Now famine is conquered, so with oversupply of very highly nutritious food, it's more likely that you become obese than need to starve to death. And diseases are conquered, so some of the hugest epidemics in the past are gone. We have vaccinations for children, which has drastically improved humans' life. The next area of science where scientists are taking their attention is hacking the death problem. So in this book he's talking about that there are some very serious studies and serious scientists that are getting a very good investment to actually research ways to conquer death and to make people live eternal life here on the earth, get people to live 200-300 years, which is absolutely fascinating. And there are scientists that believe that this is absolutely possible, not only to live 200 years, but to live an active and very powerful life over that age. And that's something that's in this book, in this science fiction book, Brave New World, where actually old people are super active. They do sports, they have sex, relationships. They're no longer kind of like these old dependent on the younger people type of humans. They are super active until they suddenly die and disappear. And in this book, like, people are conditioned so they don't believe that death is something sad, so they just accept it as it is and even laugh about it. So it's a really freaky book to read. I mean, both are freaky, but this one is kind of has a scientific touch to it, which makes it even worse. So then, yeah, you have the moment that death is kind of worked upon. Like there is the moment in biology where nanotechnology and genetical engineering can help us kind of upgrade ourselves to get the right genes, to be super smart, to be super fast. With technology and stimulating certain parts of the brain, you can actually create soldiers that don't have fear, that literally don't experience fear while they're wearing this kind of electrodes on their head. And another big question that he's talking about is our belief in the individual. So at the moment, we still kind of have our, let's say, global religion is the one of humanism, believing that the individual has something really valuable. And if you think about all cinema and all art that's been created in the 21st century, it's all about believing in yourself, searching inside yourself, like kind of having this power within ourselves. And now with neuroscience and technology, we discover that actually there is not one self, that we are kind of like this species which is like it has like several different voices that are working in our heads, and these are can be compared to several algorithms that are designed by evolution, by our upbringing, by our environment, by what we consume, like what we read, what we see, certain chemicals that we get in our bodies. And it's now becoming so easy to actually manipulate humans through certain images, through technology, let's say stimulating certain parts of the brain, getting certain pills and certain drugs in the system, which is possible to actually change the way you think. So like in the past, you know, they were giving certain medicines to gay people to transform them, to get them straight. So actually Alan Turing, the big inventor, died this way. He killed himself because he couldn't sustain these medicines were taking such a negative effect on his brain capabilities that he couldn't make it through. But it is possible that you take certain medicines and you completely change the way you think. And this is also in this book, Brave New World. This is where people would actually, whenever they feel a little bit sad, they take this pill called Soma, and it has no negative effects. It just clears their mind, it makes them feel happy, and they basically have this kind of happy, completely meaningless existence, which they absolutely enjoy. So he talks about this book that actually now we are hacking the brain. We're understanding more and more about the brain, that the brain is kind of like a combination of chemicals and it can be so easily controlled. We saw the Cambridge Analytica scandal, how people were swayed just by being shown the right messages and the right sequence on Facebook. They decided to vote for a certain candidate. So that's like pretty scary. And then it comes the argument. This is kind of one of the chapters which he calls the clock bomb in the laboratory. Our opinions and everything that we are is so easily controllable and so easily predictable as well. So if we have all the data, algorithms can easily predict how we're gonna vote, what we're gonna eat, where we're gonna go. Like pretty much before we know it, they know it, because they are using machine learning and tons of data. Provided we have this data, it's very easy to make these decisions. So then it comes the question, and what is the value of the human then? Like, what is freedom? Like, we talk a lot about the freedom of the individual, but are individuals actually free, since their opinions can change so easily just by swallowing a pill or taking a drink or just being having a bit of a cold or being under the weather? We can actually predict that, and especially if you are tracking a lot of your activities on all this kind of fashion, that you track your activities with a wristband, your sports activities, you sequence your genes, you do genetic tests to see your genetic tree and history. In London even we have a shop that they recently opened in Covent Garden where they check your DNA and they give you a list of the foods and the colors that you have to have, like what kind of colors you should wear and what kind of foods you have to eat, and like materials that you have to use, like based on your DNA. So it's pretty freaky, but kind of having like all these huge amounts of data makes machines being able to take decisions before human can take decisions, then what's the value of humans? And there are three really crazy scenarios that he talks about. So there is one scenario where humanity completely loses its value. So majority, there's like this huge useless population of people that are worth for nothing. Like now we don't need, let's say in the far future, we don't need taxi drivers, we don't need workers in factories. We don't, like, majority of the jobs are outsourced to machines that can do way better work than humans. And what do you do with the rest of the people? And he talks about maybe kind of isolating these people into virtual reality worlds where they just take the Soma pill and feel happy. So that's kind of one freaky scenario. There is another scenario that we continue value the humans, but we don't value that much the individual anymore, because we understand that the individual is an actual individual. So it's something that's really kind of easy, like there's this bunch of voices that live inside our heads and we never one thing. So we change so quickly and so easily. And then there is also the scenario where we talk about an upgraded elite of humans that are genetically upgraded. They have, let's say, longer life. They have some parts of their body are replaced by machines. Maybe they have micro, like nano robots in their blood that are purifying their blood and making them live longer. They maybe have special parts of the brain stimulated by computer for sharper and faster reasoning. They don't feel fear. So in a way they are better than the others, let's say than the masses. And then you have like this small upgraded elite which is ruling everybody else. And they, like he says, that in centuries and centuries the rich thought themselves that for some reason they are better genetically than the rest. Well, now they can actually be, since they can afford kind of designer babies and they can genetically pick and choose what they want to be and upgrade themselves with machines. So that sounds pretty scary as well. So these are these three scenarios and they all seem very plausible. So to be honest, like working in a company like Google gives me the possibility to see a lot about how technology develops. I see fascinating things and it's all with good intentions, you know, like we all want to solve hard problems. So now, like recently there was this case where Google IE model was able to predict breast cancer faster than a doctor and more accurate than a doctor. So these are really great applications of technology. And the moment we use technology to really improve our lives and to get things better, it's all good intentions. But essentially what he talks about in this book is that this is all how everything started. So let's say in the beginning, when humanism was kind of breaking through the old medieval period, people were still believing in God, but they gradually started to focus more on the individual, until one moment they just completely disconnected and decided, like, actually God doesn't exist. It's all in the imagination of the individual, and the individual is the God. So is it possible that at some point we'll be like, yeah, like we're doing all these improvements for the improvement of humanity, for making humanity feel good and solving this problem, but at some point, like, we have this superior technology which is way better than everything else, then why do we need the humans? And he comes to the final one chapter, which is about a new kind of dogma and religion, which is now coming in and taking place a lot in science, is the deityism. So this is kind of the belief, and there's people who seriously believe that the whole purpose of the universe and everything around us is the processing of data. This is why humans are better in processing data and passing data to each other, therefore they are superior than animals. But what happens when you have something that processes data better than humans, which we already kind of see with machine learning, with technology and artificial intelligence? What will happen then is that these machines should take the place of humans, so that the purpose of data processing continues. I know it sounds pretty freaky, but this is kind of something that he said, like, you have to be aware that this is becoming a dogma in science. And a lot of scientists now look at people and animals as biological algorithms. So his urge is kind of like to to come back and really know ourselves and think really truly, like, are we just algorithms? Is that what we are? He's a very big believer in meditation. Actually, I made a video about meditation, which is one of my new habits. You can check it there. He talks a little bit about the fact that maybe we don't know yet much about who we really are. We don't know ourselves that well, and it's very easy to fall into the trap that we are these data processing biological algorithms and leave it there and kind of think ourselves as inferior. So a lot of thoughts. Like this book is kind of like, and a lot of things that you might disagree with and may find shocking, but I really encourage you to read it and to think for yourself. So this is all from me for today. Thanks so much for watching, and I'll be back with a new video next week.